what I have to say, cause we're in for some old-fashioned wrestling today. Not the violent, oily, opposerish kind, but the kind that involves pins and thumbs you will find, cause it's thumb wrestling time. Yes, it's thumb wrestling time. So we will discuss pros and cons, faults and pluses of all your favorite movies, and we will ponder the merits of cinema in this WrestleMania, cause it's thumb wrestling time. Yes, it's thumb wrestling time. Yes, it's thumb wrestling time.
Hello, pod people. Wow! That is from the invasion of the body snatchers. Alright, let's get back to normal. You are listening to a brand new episode of Thumb Wrestling, the podcast in which I, Ruud Vos, will be speaking with a podcast about a certain movie about which we disagree. This is episode 139, and it's a special one because it will be Sinterklaas themed, which is weird in a English language podcast, but it's the time of the season here in the Netherlands, so it makes sense. Except that when we recorded this episode all the way back on the 16th of March of this year, I had no idea that it would be coming out now. I was merely lucky that my guest would be attending a language-based edition of the In Science Film Festival, where he was a speaker and where he performed a bit. I took a shot, he was up for it, and so we recorded this. And it just so happened that we spoke about a movie that takes place at Sinterklaas, which in hindsight is perfect timing. My guest was, or is, Derek Mitchell, actor, comedian, content creator, and American. And you may well have seen his stuff on his social media channels at Let's Double Dutch. You can find him on Instagram and on TikTok. And in Let's Double Dutch, he very much lovingly takes the piss of us Dutchies. Because Derek has moved to the Netherlands over 10 years ago. And he has really mastered not just our language, but also our speaking patterns when we speak English. You could say he is fluent in the steenkolen Engels. And he could probably say that better than I did just now. So that's his level. Derek also speaks fluent Dutch. So you could argue that we might as well have recorded this in Dutch. But seeing how his channel reaches millions of people, 25 million, shit, I figured let's make this accessible for everyone, right? Even people who will never probably see this film. And this film is Love is All, or as we Dutchies call it, Alles is Liefde. And it was remade in Belgium as Zot van A, but let's forget about that. Alles is Liefde is our cheap knockoff of Love Actually. Only instead of Christmas, we put it at Sinterklaas. It was directed by Joram Leurse and it was written by Kim van Koten, who at that point hadn't written that much yet, especially not in film and television. But since, she's flourished and also kept flourishing as an actress, so go figure. In the Netherlands, this is known as the Dutch romantic comedy that is actually good. And back when I saw it for the first time, I really liked it as well. Of course, it's a mosaic with all different kinds of characters, loosely or not so loosely connected to each other. And it has an all-star Dutch cast with, at the top of the heap, Carice van Houten. You know, Melisandre from the Game of Thrones. Of course, she wasn't Melisandre from Game of Thrones back then. She had only just pretty much breaking through with the movie Black Book or Zwart Boek, Paul Verhoeven film. That would also prove to be her international breakthrough. But you know what? Let's stop talking. Let's get to the real thing, the conversation with Derek Mitchell about Alles is Liefde. And I'll be back at the end to plug his tour and give you a couple of extra recommendations.
3, 2, 1, fire!
So, Alles is Liefde, or Love is All, as it's internationally called, because why the fuck not?
Is that what the English?
Yeah, Love is All.
Love is All.
Like the Roger Glover song.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay.
I'm not sure if that is the link, but no, the song isn't even in the movie. But film from 2007. I asked you, would you like to make an opening statement to set the mood?
Yes. So I've written a very short kind of just description, or not really a synopsis. It's just like a short intro about what the film is about, I think, in my view.
Yeah.
So Alles is Liefde, Love is All, is about a group of adults living in Amsterdam who experience the magic of Sinterklaas and of romantic love at the same time. And we slowly realize that their lives and relationships are interconnected, and it serves as an homage to Dutch cultural nostalgia and the Dutch media landscape of the mid-2000s.
Basically, yeah. But also, your what would be your review of the movie? How would you...
What scale are we working? Are we working with a star scale, or are we...
Whatever you like.
I think I would give it 2.5 stars as a film.
All right.
Out of 5.
That's a half star less than I, but that's enough to... half star less.
It's an officially, I think, negative review if I'm giving it 2.5. If you're at 3, then that's a very centrist, neutral.
Yeah, kind of
review.
positive.
Yeah. I mean, a Dutch 3 is an English 4, truly.
Yeah.
So, because 5 stars for a Dutch person is too over the top.
You also notice that with audiences, they're just sitting there with their arms crossed.
Yeah. And then afterwards, they were like, "Yeah, it was nice.
I had so much fun."
Yeah. Time of my life. Yeah. So 2.5 stars from me for Alles is Liefde. And I say that with a lot of Liefde for Dutch cinema, Dutch actors, Dutch theater, all of these things. And so I'm measuring that too, because I think that this is one of the films that our generation holds up as like a cherished film, I think is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's sort of the one where Dutch people go like, yeah, we can do this.
Yeah.
This is the one where we did well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like a happy puppy.
Exactly, yeah.
This was good, wasn't it? Please like me.
Yeah.
But you think, nah.
Well, no, I just think that's very unfortunate because, my partner is an actor, and because of him and through his friends, I know people who make films and make series in the Netherlands for the Dutch market. And there are so many hugely talented people with such original visions. And I think there's a lot of Dutch comedy that's fantastic, but I think when it comes to especially like big budget like series or films, oftentimes it seems like programmers, producers are so business minded in how they're approaching things that they are just trying to be like, how do we make the Dutch Love Actually? How do we make the Dutch Crown? And it's sort of like, what a disservice to the very original ideas and talents that are uniquely Dutch.
Yeah.
Alex van Warmerdam is one of my favorite filmmakers. And I think actually, I don't know how known he is in the English-speaking world necessarily, but I see his work as like, I'm a big David Lynch fan, and I see Alex's stuff as being part of like this pantheon of ambitious, autoristic film. Yeah. And the way that he uses these kind of bleak kind of landscapes in this tone that feels a little bit Germanic, almost a little bit Norse. It just feels so uniquely Dutch to me, but still very sober and kind of ironic.
Well, his film Borgman was the first Dutch language film to be entered into the Cannes competition for a long time. So people abroad do notice.
They know.
Yeah. But also sort of feels like his films could only come from the Netherlands in a way, which is really cool.
I love that, yeah.
But Alles is Liefde, you told me you rewatched it just before.
I did,
But what was the first time you saw it?
When I saw this movie for the first time.
I think the first time I saw it was in the first year that I came to the Netherlands, because it's like a thing that you should acquaint yourself with, I think, if you move here, because it's an important culture.
We'll show you our culture of blackface.
Yes. Yeah, it's and truly not just the like Sinterklaas and Zwarte Pizza traditions, but so many of the references in the movie require a knowledge of like Dutch culture and Dutch media, especially of the 2000s. Like I could imagine, Paul de Leeuw and so many people in that film who were like famous presenters at that time.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were playing these characters, their off-screen personas informed the storytelling. I would imagine that there are some, like Dutch teenagers now who watch that movie and are like, we don't get this. Like, what is special about this, Because it's so of its time. But as like a new immigrant to this country watching it, you're like, what the hell is going on here? Like, I don't understand the jokes. Like, I don't understand the references. But if you do understand it, I imagine it's very special. Blackface notwithstanding.
I thought it was very interesting that you proposed this one because, first of all, I've had loads of Dutch guests tearing apart American films or English films or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's good to have the reverse of that for once, for an iota of balance.
Yeah.
But also, it is a film in which I think it's not badly written dialogue-wise. It actually has some zingers where I think that's pretty good. But it's also a film in which... Sorry?
Dit is niet mijn vader.
Yeah. But also a couple of moments where Dutch rudeness passes for comedy in a very deliberate way.
Yeah.
And I think that's also something that you like to reference in your own comedy styles yourself.
Sometimes. Such as, is there an example you're thinking of from the film?
Well, especially the lead, Carice van Houten. She's very upfront, very direct.
Yes.
And especially to the prince.
Yeah.
Where she goes like, you probably just want to have your way with me and then pass me. But that's a comic scene.
Yeah.
But it's also just her being direct to him in a way. So
and her being Carice van Houten. The OG pre Game of Thrones Carice.
Yeah, but this is basically the film where she was introduced to a larger audience. She had done Minus.
Yeah. I've seen
which is also sort of referenced in the film because she walks across a rooftop. Apart from that, and a couple of movies by Martin Koolhoven, who I also interviewed in this room, by the way. But,
wow.
But apart from a couple of films, she wasn't really known that much yet, and this is the one that put the Netherlands onto Carice van Houten.
Yeah.
Before Zwart Boek propelled her to an international career, which is the same year almost.
Yeah. And made her a kind of serious dramatic acting talent.
Yeah.
Which I think is funny when you think about, I mean, when she was at the ATKA in Amsterdam, she was a cabaretier actually. Like she's a comic actor. And that's what you're seeing her do in this film. So the fact that the world knows her as this grave kind of sci-fi drama actress is funny to me because actually like her real chops, I think, are like playing these kind of quirky, strange, difficult to pin down women. And I think like this film is a great testament to that style.
But also, I think she said in interviews when this movie came out that she and her sister Jelka were trying to be Paul de Leeuw, who now plays her brother in this film, which is interesting.
Right. You mean they were trying to be like presenters, TV presenters?
No, Paul de Leeuw was also a stage comedian.
Right.
And
so
they were really, I think he even said she was in love with Paul de Leeuw.
Right.
Something like that, which is...
That's so funny.
Interesting and cool.
That's so funny. Yeah, I mean, she's beloved. I mean, my partner Tim is a wonderful and very talented comedian and comic actor and cabaretier. And amongst like him and his friends in that world, I mean, her legendary status is for that. Not for Game of Thrones. I mean, everybody's like happy for her that she got that. But it's really that she was this truly authentic artist who could go up onto a stage and delight a room full of people with just her craft.
I carried a watermelon.
One of my complaints about this film is that I think I have no reason to believe in or care about any of the romantic relationships at all.
I tried to make like a schedule of every relationship in this film and went by it like, do I even buy this?
Yeah.
Well, does this have anything to say except there is love here, and in the end everything works out, and that it's easy to watch, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find anything that felt like a true relationship. The thing that I thought worked best in that respect was the kid taking the hand of the girl next to him at the pool and then jumping in together. I thought that was the most heartfelt thing in a movie.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm slagging off the movie I'm trying to defend, but that's all right.
I mean, it's the fact it's the deep nostalgia that people have for it, but also the nostalgia that is so deeply embedded in its storytelling, I think, make it impossible to just slag it off as a bad film. It's doing something that makes you feel something, and I think what's interesting is to think about why it's making you feel those things. But I don't think it's because we're seeing relationships reflected that feel familiar, like something we've experienced.
No.
And it occurred to me that Carice is also just playing a manic pixie dream girl, which was like so kind of that was such a familiar archetype around that time, like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and Zooey Deschanel kind of entering into the cultural conversation in 500 Days of Summer. Like these
but
films,
those are also two films that sort of critique the manic pixie dream girl in a way, or at least play with it a bit more. It's not like Garden State.
True. That's a kind of more unironic, like kind of a vision of this, like, you know, rom-com-y womanhood. But it feels a little bit like that is what's happening with Carice in this film.
And the writing doesn't really help her. I don't think that Kim van Koten is necessarily a bad writer or anything, but when it comes to the relationship, especially that one of hers, Kiki, with Prince Valentine.
Yeah.
I think Paul DeLeeuw's character is right. She should just have a one-night stand and then leave it at that. But she keeps romanticizing it. And the romanticizing is also about a sort of a realistic view, because she wants to still be loved by a man even when she's ugly with her hair and her tits are leaking milk and stuff like that. So that has an aside of reality in there, but she still romanticizes that image so much that it doesn't feel like she's realistic about the whole thing, the whole package.
No, and it also feels like for the premise to be that she earnestly is looking for a prince on a white horse, that like she herself is not being ironic when she talks about that. Like that immediately makes me think that like women of this generation now would be like, I think that's gross. Like I can't really relate to that at all. Like that's if you're gonna say that, you should definitely be joking. And I guess to an extent also, you know, Willem Alexander and Maxima, that was happening around that time, right?
They'd been married in 2002.
Yeah, so this idea that like the Dutch prince could meet this kind of like quirky woman who would then turn out to be beloved. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and actually, I mean, that also there's really interesting and maybe sometimes uncomfortable things happening with like class and socioeconomic movements through society and mobility in this film. Another relationship that makes zero sense to me, I can't remember what their names are, is the
builder?
Yeah, the builder and his wife.
Yeah, the actors are Thomas Agda and Anneke Blok.
And they're great. But like it reminds me a little bit, do you know Everybody Loves Raymond? Yeah. That horrible, well, I mean, it was a sitcom from America. It was very famous. This relationship doesn't make any sense to me. He is such like a fuck up. And it's like she's so put together and is just sorting out all the kids' lives and everything. And they live in this massive house in Amsterdam. Yeah. He's like now working in a bar. It's like, how are they paying? She doesn't work, it seems like. Yeah. But
Well, at least she gets a couple of scenes where she can be funny.
Yeah.
That's more than you can say for
Yes.
the partner from Everybody Loves Raymond.
yeah, exactly. She was just a nag the whole time.
Yeah. But still, there's this element of she has her shit together. He is like a huge idiot, fucking everything up.
Yes.
He even steals, and he
Yeah.
just he just has to return it,
He
and
has
then everything
big
is all
problems,
right.
like serious problems.
And she just doesn't want to be alone, and that's the only reason that she
Yeah.
keeps hanging on to him.
Yeah.
It seems like.
So again, I have to think, I mean, Tim and I were talking about it in the car, and Tim was like, it was a different time. Like those beats narratively and culturally, people would watch it and be like, yeah, that makes sense to me. You would stay in that relationship because staying together is more important. They have children. Whereas now you watch that and you're like, woman, if you're staying with this man, at some point it is your fault. Like, you need to get out. This is so bad.
Let's destroy this myth of you have to stay together if
Yes.
it's a destructive relationship.
Yeah, terrible and fascinating. So fascinating. And Love Actually is the exact same. Like, Love Actually is also full of these improbable relationships that at the time
Yeah.
were archetypal. They were borrowed from the language of rom-com.
Yeah.
Love.
And now we look at it and we think, ooh, stalker.
Yes,
The
exactly.
stalker.
Sexual harassment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all in there, but still those relationships still seem more fleshed out.
Yeah. I mean, the Emma Thompson.
Yeah. Alan
and-
Rickman.
Yeah, Alan. That the pain of their like kind of unraveling marriage.
Yeah.
Feels universally felt in that movie. It's like her crying to Joni Mitchell in that room is still a meme. People still understand that, right?
Yeah.
I think it's like, I think almost, maybe this is something that is uniquely Dutch, and it also exists in Gooise Vrouwen and in kind of campy, in camp. I mean, that campness is part of Kleinkunst, so it is a Dutch cultural artifact. But it's like the relationship between the builder and his wife in this film is a little bit more heightened. It's a little bit more ridiculous. Him not like taking and then being fired from 3 jobs in a day and then stealing a necklace, that goes further than Love Actually ever goes.
Yeah.
In making the characters ridiculous. And maybe that is a uniquely Dutch thing.
There's also this idea of what's expected of a romantic comedy, I think, and it tries to push it that way.
Yeah.
But I think that's also very much embedded in the way that it was made. The idea came from casting director Job Goschalk.
Yes.
Also not aged well.
Big Me Too person.
That's true. But so if you ignore that bit of it, which might be hard to do, but let's try that. His idea was, I want to make a Dutch Love Actually. Simple as that. So this movie turns into Alles is marketing.
Yeah.
Because he goes, we should have this, we should have that, we should have that. So his idea to get Kim van Cote, who wasn't known as a writer by then, was inspired.
Yeah.
I think he was just sort of enamored with her sense of humor, and he thought we should have that. And that part of it, I think, definitely works. But it also goes, everything should end up happily.
Yeah.
Where even Love Actually doesn't do that. Lots of stuff in that winds up all right, but the creepy stalker guy with the signs doesn't end up with Keira Knightley.
Yeah.
He goes into a zombie apocalypse instead. The marriage between Emma Thompson and Alan Rickman doesn't end happily.
No.
Adds a sort of more like it says love is important, but doesn't always end happily.
Yeah.
And this movie basically says, no, people leave you, people die, but it's what you do in the meantime that counts. Says that, but doesn't show it.
And I think maybe there's something about the storytelling and the editing that makes it feel like that Alles is Liefde is really trying to control our understanding of these relationships and their outcomes. And one of the things that I noted, one of my biggest problems with the film as a film is the way the soundtrack is always telegraphing exactly what we're supposed to think and feel. And it really bothers me because, like I said, the acting talent in this movie is insane. And I mean, that's another reason why, what was the casting director?
Job Goschalk.
Yeah. I mean, he got all of his friends to be in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And like the tiniest, like barely speaking bit roles are played by like award-winning theater actors and famous
comedians
people
and stuff like that. Yeah.
It's incredible. And it's like in some of these scenes, it's like you can tell that they've been given a very short leash and that they've been directed to just punch the lines, very quick pickups.
Yeah.
And they're not letting the scenes always breathe because that Nora Jones cue has to come in so that we know this is a tearjerker moment now.
Yeah.
And then we're going to do a transition of the prince wandering along the Prinsengracht. And it's like, this is so constraining.
Yeah, I think that's a staple of Dutch filmmaking, which you can boil down to a phrase that is used in cinema sins. Maybe you don't like cinema sins, loads of people don't, I understand that. But sometimes the language is quite creative, like movie has to movie is a thing that I really like to explain stuff. And that's something that happens lots of times in Dutch cinema. Like this romantic comedy, so it has to work this way. You expect these things, so we'll give it to you because that's what you expect from a romantic comedy. Let's not subvert any of the usual stuff that's in there. Let's just give you what you expect from it.
Yeah.
And also Joram Leurse, he's a very serviceable director. He knows what he does. I've even interviewed him here at Lux once for a movie that he did, and he's a very nice guy. He knows his stuff. But this feels like a TV movie.
Yeah.
Also the way it looks, the way it moves, the way it's cut.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's, I mean, I'm an actor. And so I will always take issue when I feel like the great actors in a scene that I'm invested in aren't being allowed to act their way through the scene. But I appreciate that sometimes that's not what the film calls for. The director is doing something else. Yeah. But I feel that here. I felt often like it felt claustrophobic in terms of the pacing.
And do you sometimes feel that an actor does get to do his own thing in this film?
I mean, I will say that Carice is very much doing the Carice thing of like, this is an auditory medium right now, so you can't see me, but this kind of twitchy, like embarrassed, like awkward acting thing. Yeah. So she
sometimes
gets to go ham.
Goes in hard for like,
yeah, she does.
She makes herself a bit ugly with that, which I really like.
Grotesque. Yeah, that like stuff, even from the get when she's on the horse and the Christmas or the gift costume. it's like kind of grotesque, which is like fun. Yeah, but she's given a bit of leeway, I think. But
she can cook.
Yeah. But like what's her name? Who does who's like the kind of runner producer?
Lies Visserdijk.
Yeah, Lies Visserdijk. I think she's great.
She's really good,
and she's doing all these exposition lines the whole movie long.
She doesn't get to do much.
We have 10 minutes. Scratch that. 5. And then she's just running around, and it's like she has no freedom to like have a bit of fun.
I do think this was sort of before she was well known enough to get that much leeway, which she probably would get now.
Yeah, probably.
I think Paul de Leeuw makes a lot of the scenes very extra watchable that he's in.
Yes.
He just has to stand there and be charming, and it works.
Yeah,
just exhumes it.
Yeah. And his partner, his fiance with the kind of LARPing.
Yeah, Daan Schuurmans.
That is the best. I mean, that storyline, I just want to see the sequel just about that group of live action role players supporting their friend who's very and what's his name? The very funny cabaretier who's also in
Alex
Klaassen is so funny. He has like 2 scenes and he steals the show. I mean, but he's famous for stealing the show, but he's very funny. And that's a great example. I mean, like he was at this time, he had kind of had his breakthrough, right? In Gooise Vrouwen. That was like what made him famous.
I think that's about the same time. And he'd just gotten the gig, or was just finished with his gig as one of the impersonators on Kopspijkers.
Yes.
Around this time.
Yeah.
Where he did Marco Borsato.
Yeah, he's very funny. And he's just in it for a few moments. That's also funny. I would love to see somebody reimagine romantic comedy as genre in a way that like Charlie Kaufman does with Eternal Sunshine. And I know that there is a young, ambitious Dutch writer and or director who has it in them. But watching this movie just made me crave that. And I think I just generally crave more bolder, more interesting work from the Dutch industry. And like sometimes when you see like awards fodder and stuff that gets made for Netflix, you're just like, this was it? This was the idea? This is what we're putting the money in?
Well, this is going to pay itself back, so we'll give money to this?
Yeah.
Like they all feel like risk assessments.
Yes, exactly. It's so clinical, and there's no kind of spirit or life to it. I mean, there is spirit and life in all this, Liefde, definitely.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I wonder how it will age. How do you think it will age? I mean, it already hasn't aged well.
Alles is liefde.
Yeah.
I already think that it hasn't become the classic that we thought it would be.
No.
In a way, it's still there. People know of it very well. People have fond memories of it.
Yeah.
And it's on TV. It has been every year, but I don't think the last few years as much. So I think interest is sort of fading.
Well, like I said, I mean, I believe that so much of the storytelling is dependent on these reference and kind of images that exist outside of the film.
Yeah.
And if those don't survive the passage of time and changes in how media works, then like the film will become increasingly inscrutable to new generations. And like I said, I can't imagine a 14-year-old Dutch person without their parents or without somebody telling them about the jokes, watching this and being like, yes, I understand why that like Paul de Leeuw thing is fun and funny.
Yeah.
They'd just be like,
even though Paul Leeuw is
that?
still around, but
yeah, true.
But in kind of a different way now.
Yeah, I mean, the people in that film then were some of the most famous Dutch people, the biggest BN'ers.
Yeah, I made a list because I like making lists of noticing people and going, oh yeah, but there are definitely people in here who have sort of faded from view or have gone on to do other things because of which they're not well, it's already weird to see Mark-Marie Huybrechts back with a wig on.
Yeah.
Which was a big thing when he took it off. Of course, there's Viggo Waas.
Yeah.
Well, he was on TV constantly back then, also because of his roles in Kopspijkers and stuff like that. And Niet uit het raam is cabaret group. Was very famous at that time. But of the people from that cabaret group, he's the one I see the least nowadays. Even though he was, because he's a very pretty man. He was the most popular back then, I think.
Fact check Norris.
Fact check Norris here, reporting for sensitivity purposes. Viggo Waas has been out of the running for a couple of years because he suffered an ischemic stroke. So very serious business. In the last few months, he has resurfaced to get back on stage together with Peter Heerschop. Fact check Norris out. But you most often see Joep van Deudekom, who's also in this, by the way, because he still does science programs on television here and there. Oh yeah, the Vliegende Panthers, they were still together when this happened. So that feels very aged. You see those three, and then we thought, oh cool, it's the Vliegende Panthers.
Yeah.
And now you go, oh, I know him from doing theater over there. I know him from being on television over there. And the third guy, I don't know. Even though Rutger is still very active in writing songs and stuff like that, I think.
Yeah.
But that's gone. But then you have Valerio Zeno, who's a whole thing on itself. It
Yeah.
was really popular back then
Yeah.
because of his BNN TV programs.
Yeah. This is the young guy that the woman
Yeah.
has an affair with, who's 16. Yeah.
Who's a 16-year-old intern.
Yeah.
Do you have 16-year-old interns
I
ever?
don't think that's legal.
No, exactly. So that's already very weird. He's a TV presenter still. He does, what is it? The Meisje in the Jungle, Echte Meisje in the Jungle.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, he was in a movie podcast last year.
Mm-hmm.
They went to see a film, and then he also talked about his role in Alles is Liefde.
Yeah.
And he is a very good sport about how bad he is in this movie.
Really?
He finds it very funny, pokes fun at himself about not being able to act and how bad an idea it was of him to do this.
Oh.
But for me,
Yeah.
I think he might be one of the best things unintentionally about the film.
Yeah. Well,
Because I love watching how weird he is in this movie.
Yeah. But I think it's also a film like implicitly about celebrity too. I mean, that's something that that is part of what's happening in it, because it's not just about, I mean, there's a level of abstraction to how it's actually about an idea of love that is attached to like celebrity and media and culture, and that warm, happy feelings that those things can give us too.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, the fact that just every scene is crammed with these familiar faces and people that we know, like there's a reason why that is. I mean, maybe practically it's just because this was the brainchild of somebody who knew a bunch of famous people.
Yeah.
But in bringing them all in a room together, the film is doing something on that level, whether we want it to or not. It is.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why people love it.
Alles is marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is probably a more suitable title for the movie.
Yeah, but they were very upfront about it. They
Totally.
also said
No, I
that,
mean, it's
yeah.
not. I mean, but all that is, I mean, mass media is obsessed with itself.
Yeah.
Mass media is always talking about itself on some level.
Like it's the most important thing in the world, especially.
Yeah, because it's endlessly enticing. It's endlessly fascinating to examine why we love it and why we feel attracted to it, and how the familiar names and faces that make it magical do that. And I think absolutely that's what this film is doing, and that's what Love Actually did too, in a huge way. And interestingly, there's never been an American Love Actually that was as successful as Love Actually.
No, they've tried so hard.
Yeah.
What was it, New Year's Day?
Yeah, and they're all trash. And they're all full of people that are even more internationally famous than the people in Love Actually.
And Gary Marshall, who also is famous for directing Pretty Woman.
Yes.
And even Runaway Bride, which was a sort of a lesser, but still a sort of a success.
Yeah.
He went on to do like 3 or 4 of these films.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but
Yeah, very, very thinly plotted and bald-faced attempts at kind of commercial success.
yeah.
And that is all this is marketing. That's what it is.
And you just see people like Ashton Kutcher holding on to their careers in those movies.
Yeah, and doing some weird physical gag on a balcony on St. Patrick's Day where they're like covered in shaving cream or something like that. That's like that's the most that movie can aspire to achieve.
I know there are already kind of a lot of comedians who don't really like Love Actually. It's not the best loved in that demographic, at least.
I think that like I think like the signs, like the sign, open the door, like the sexual harassment thing. I mean, I think it's almost like that in itself has become a meme.
Yeah.
Like the internet loves to like write things on those posters and stuff. And I think in that way, like the film is actually really earnest. Like Love Actually is a very earnest story about these characters. And so I think it makes it, that's something that Alles is Liefde does have going for it. I think there's a sense of fun to Alles is Liefde, whereas Love Actually feels like pretty serious, I think. And maybe that's why it can pull off these like tearjerker moments that I don't think Alles is Liefde does. I think Alles is Liefde is more comic.
Yeah.
I think there's a sense that like there's a kind of that there are unresolvable flaws in these characters that will be their undoing, and that we get to delight in feeling superior to them and laughing about it.
A bit more farcical.
Yeah, I think so.
I think my biggest defense of Alles is Liefde would also be, this is all we have.
Well, that's
true,
my biggest
entirely true.
criticism of it, is that, like, if that's all you have, then Jesus Christ, go to the film schools that this country does have, full of talented students.
There are so many talented
Go
filmmakers.
to all the cabaretiers, go to everybody and be like, can you come up with something better? Because I guarantee you that they will. And I just think time and again, it's just disappointing the way that people, the gatekeepers in Dutch media, make terrible decisions.
There's no crying in thumb wrestling.
You have the scene where Prince Valentine stands outside in the rain, very romantic, holds an umbrella over Clarice van Houten's head.
Yeah.
And they have an interaction, and you feel like it's because Paul de Leeuw has just told her she just have sex one time.
Yeah.
And he's an available guy standing there.
Yeah.
And he says to her in his blackface, ik ben goed in bed.
Yeah.
So she goes with him. They have a night and stuff like that. But basically, he thinks that she doesn't know who he is. Turns out later that she does, but he thinks she's unaware of who he is.
Yeah.
Now, there is a bit of consensualness in that scene, as in she goes with him after that.
Yeah.
It's at least suggested.
Yeah.
But if he thinks that she doesn't know who he is, isn't this sort of a scene of rape by blackface?
Well, when you put it that way, it makes me think nobody
It's sort of the
should see this film.
it's sort of the Revenge of the Nerds argument.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. The way he's like pursuing her is creepy as hell.
Yeah.
And whatever anybody wants to say about white people not realizing that blackface was bad before 2010, fine. Like, it is just a jarring thing to see. Like, the scene is in so many levels just like weird. And the idea of like a man just like chasing after a woman, like just repeatedly trying to convince her to have sex with him. Like, we just don't do that anymore. And I think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
There is something there that's like, oh God. And I mean, this is like gross to say, but I think, this like very classical, like Shakespearean idea of like masks, and then that as like a trope, and like suddenly you don't know who it is, but you go to bed because of some other form of connection or whatever. Like, maybe that's something that it's trying to achieve here. I think in a present day, if they were going to remake this film, they would have to rethink all of that.
Yeah.
Because it's very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. And also extra interesting because it turns out that she does know who he is. So then basically that clears away the charges that I just put through the film. Mm-hmm. Even though he didn't know, it's still debatable. But well, in the end, it's not as bad as you could think at that point in the movie.
Yeah.
But it also turns very weird because he then goes on to say, well, I only wanted to be in one night stand, but now I feel stuff.
Yeah.
Which doesn't show before. It seems like he's already more interested in her than he should be.
Yeah.
But he still puts it out there like, no, I just try to make you a conquest and that's it. Which then tarnishes the whole thing again.
Totally. I mean, I think what it's doing is it does feel like this very like classical comedic way of like understanding, the pursuit of romance between a man and a woman. And I genuinely think that we have undergone a massive shift in how we tell romantic stories through media, through kind of dramatic storytelling in the last 10 years. And like, it does feel just like this thing that does, it is like Shakespearean. Like, it is for hundreds of years, Europeans would tell stories where like a woman would be like, no, thank you. And a man would be like, are you sure? I'm going to try again. And then in the end, they would get together and then they would be like, oh, we actually are happy. Yeah. And we all just were like, that is great. Let's keep telling that story over and over again. I think only recently did we say, what if we didn't? Yeah. What if we did it differently?
Maybe this is just like food for stalkers.
Yes, exactly. Well, and it normalizes
creates toxic behavior.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, what is very interesting is when Jan, dressed as Sinterklaas, goes on a talk show and tells a black man from America,
That scene is very strange.
these are slaves.
Yeah.
And in 2007, we didn't bat an eye about that he says that dressed as Sinterklaas. Like, oh, it's all right, it's Michiel Romein, haha, he's funny.
Yeah.
We don't have to take what he says seriously. But when people who do have another ethnicity start pointing out, yeah, this is actually how we feel, people just got freaking mad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I almost didn't quite understand the comedy of how that scene was working because, like,
it's from a time when people like, it's like almost 10 years after the Spice Girls went on Dutch television with Paul de Leeuw, and they saw Zwarte Piet, and they were like, this is bad, this is blackface, we shouldn't do that, this is awful. But it was sort of seen as a curiosity. They don't understand us.
yeah.
Sort of thing.
Right.
And around this time, you also had Duitse Kroes, the Dutch supermodel. She'd learned an outside perspective in America. Went on a Dutch talk show, and she said basically, well, I don't actually think this is a good thing we're doing here. This looks very bad if you're not Dutch and you don't realize this.
Yeah.
We thought, that's so funny, stupid top model. What does she know?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So it sort of echoes those things.
I see. Right. So there is this like cultural awareness at the time already that people outside of the Netherlands think this is bad.
Yeah,
and
but we
it's a doubling
waved them
down
away.
and saying, well, you just don't understand.
Yeah.
Right. That's the joke of that scene. So the only black character in the whole film, the only non-white character in the whole film is a punchline for like them just not getting why Zwarte Piet is cool.
In the end, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Just so we have that clear.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a strange scene, and truly, this film could not be viewed by a non-Dutch person who doesn't have some understanding of these cultural things. And I mean, Tim and I were also talking about that scene too. I mean, this explanation helps me, but I'm a Dutch national now. I have a passport. I have lived in this country for over 10 years. I speak the language
So now
fluently.
it's your culture as well.
I still don't understand it.
Yeah.
Truly. You know, I'm deeply integrated, and I still am like, it's baffling to me. And so it's like, this film will never be fondly remembered by anybody outside of the Netherlands anyway.
I think it's also very funny that we keep clinging to something. We realized it was bad before and we made a bad explanation for it. Like, he went down the chimney. That's not a traditional explanation. I think it's thought up somewhere around the 80s or something like that.
Yeah.
When they were also speaking with Suriname accents.
Yeah.
Because that was a weird fad of the time.
Yeah.
But we said, no, they're not black people. It's the chimney. Even though they have curly hair and
and
red lipstick and they look like a gollywog.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, I think it's like, the thing is like white Europeans have been and continue to be racist all around the world. And it's embedded in culture and ideology. And like blackface was in British television and comedy. Blackface was a thing until like the early 2010s. Like if you look at like Come Fly With Me, Little Britain, like these shows, Matt Lucas, there are things happening on those shows. Tracy Ullman
is sort of poking fun at it, but still.
And they were doing it to be subversive, I think, too, because the conversation was there in a public way that blackface was bad. But in those contexts, I think those people thought they were being edgy in a period of time in the noughties in the UK when like alt comedy was mainstream. And that happened. And like, you can't deny that happened. There also has to be a way for any sort of kind of messed up caricaturing or media representation that was damaging to a group of people. We have to collectively as a society be like, yeah, that happened. We also can move on from it now. We need to be able to move on. That's really important. And I think it's, you know, it's not as if those problems are now just only in the past. The problems are still there, but in the UK, I would say in a general sense, in media, it's like, yeah, that happened and we're moving on. And I think it's nice to see that is happening now in a lot of parts of the Netherlands. But you have to acknowledge it and then just say, we want to change. We want to make it, do things differently.
The weird arguments are always like, you're ruining my childhood and stuff
and it's
like that.
Nobody's,
and it's
you're
for
a
the
grown
kids.
up. You grew up.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not a child anymore. Get over it. Yeah. You're a grown up.
You probably got what you wanted from Sinterklaas. That's all you need.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, but it's also exhausting and an annoying thing to talk about. I think for everybody too.
Yeah, both sides.
Yeah,
everyone is tired of the whole debate.
Yeah,
and it keeps popping up because it needs to.
Yeah. But there's plenty in alles is Liefde to also be puzzled by.
Yeah,
completely removed from the Zwarte Pizza. I want Carice to come back and do some more Dutch films. I would really like her to do that.
Sometimes she does, but mostly when she gets to turn up for friends like Alina Rijn, then she does Instinct.
Oh yeah, I watched Red Light with Alina and Carice.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was fine. It felt unfortunate to me. Honestly, it felt like, oh, they're trying to do Killing Eve. They're trying to do a thing. They're not making their own thing. They're trying to make a media product. I want to see her do a little indie movie where she's playing a big character. I mean, she was doing big character work, and she was playing like what was she, like Jordanes, I think, in Red Light. Some big accent that she was doing. She was playing like the girlfriend of like a big drug dealer, I think. It was fun. I mean, I love watching her act. I love watching her make big technical choices as an actor. I think that's cool. And I just would love to see her come back and do some more stuff that's maybe a little bit...
But like more in a movie in the vein of, I don't know, Aan Motherfucker or so.
Yeah. I mean, I love, one of my favorite Dutch actors is Beppie Melissen. And I actually, one of the films I want to recommend is called Kapsalon Romy.
Okay, yeah, we'll get to that later. But
okay. It's amazing. And it's like this quiet little indie Dutch film. Like, I think it did the festival circuit and stuff. It's not, changing the world or doing huge, bold, big things in terms of its filmmaking, but it's fantastic and it's performance-led. Yeah. And it's like...
It's just a girl and a grandma. It's very small story, but it means the world to the people in the story. You feel that. Yeah. And it's a children's movie, which is something that Dutch people do know how to make somehow.
Yeah. And the kid in that movie is also a really good actor. Like both of their performances are like spellbinding. But I want to see Carice come to a movie like that. I just want to see her like playing a person and have it be like, I'm not a big Game of Thrones person. I don't know about you. That's not my culture really.
I watched it with very big interest. I loved season 1. Yeah. Then I wasn't that hot about season 2, which prepared me for the ending when everybody lost their minds about how they hated season 8. And I thought your standards are too high because season 2 was little more than just incest and dead babies. So it wasn't that good either, but okay, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Of all the podcasts in all the towns in the world, she walks into mine.
There's one scene in Alles is Liefde near the ending where Jan as Sinterklaas is sitting at people's home, which I think is supposed to sort of echo the Prime Minister going from door to door in Love Actually. Yeah. But then you have all these kids on bikes driving there, and I thought this is just this bit of magic realism. Too much.
Yeah, one of the things I thought of watching it a lot was like how much of the production of that movie had to have been about wrangling extras. There are endless scenes with hundreds of non-actors doing very active stuff. Yeah. Those kids on those bikes, oh my God, can you imagine being a runner on that set? That was hell on earth.
Yeah, must be. And also having it snow in those scenes, that makes the extra
truly
something nightmare. That will never happen anymore, especially at 5 December.
No, not anymore. We'll be putting on sunscreen.
The Sinterklaas intocht, they couldn't fake that, so they did a guerrilla style job at the real Sinterklaas intro.
Really? I didn't know
and
that.
had Michiel Romein run along people who were expecting to see Sinterklaas going, huh?
I did not.
So I'm
know
not sure
that.
if that is entirely like they didn't announce it or something. They should have announced it, right? In some way, you can't have someone going there running like a Sinterklaas and then going there basically like, that was a Borat we pulled on you.
It could have been. I mean, they could have just gone up to them afterwards and been like, "Do you want to be in a movie?
Yeah.
Sign this waiver."
Yeah.
And the people were like, "Absolutely." I am already somebody who has waited in line to watch this. Mm-hmm. I think the point, the Venn diagram of crossover between those people and people who would sign a waiver to just immediately be in a movie is a perfect circle.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Exactly the same people.
Oh, I thought I was only going to be on television. No,
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
even
Now I'm
better.
also going to be in the cinemas. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize that. That's a fun little bit of movie trivia.
Yeah. You have that sometimes in Dutch movies where we just don't have the big budgets to close off a whole street or wrangle up that many extras. Also with Bumperkleef, they actually went on the highway and started filming.
Right.
Because it's too difficult to just close off a whole bit of highway.
That's I mean, the scene at the beginning, it's very epic. Also the helicopter shot of the boat and stuff. Because that was
pretty
pre-drone technology.
Yeah.
Well,
it looked a lot better than when you're in the streets of Amsterdam and the camera pans up. I don't even know with who it was. I think
yes,
with
it was
Jan
with
de
Jan.
Sint,
Yeah, right before he goes and spends the night in the houseboat.
Oh yeah, right.
I think
Yeah, and that
like crane shot.
That looked a bit hokey.
Yeah, and you know that when they were making that, like the DP was like,
"This is the crane shot.
This is going to be a big one. This is going to be epic."
Now it looks like a movie.
Yeah, now we're making movies. Yeah. It is wild. I mean, if you live in Amsterdam, like every single location, you know exactly where it is, and it's I mean, it looks great. The film looks great, and they really make good use of Amsterdam, I would say, in terms of even just when somebody's walking through a front door, it's always like on a canal. It's always gorgeous. I mean, it is fascinating to think that like a construction worker and his wife who doesn't work live in this home on a canal.
Yeah.
With like 2 stories in a canal view. But the shots are amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The city does give it more character.
Yeah.
And you couldn't make a film like this outside of Amsterdam, I think, or you would get to have a really interesting, maybe something like Liefde, or could you have its own one? Loads of films these days are made in Rotterdam.
Really?
I think,
like for like crime shows and stuff like that.
Not just any sort of film.
Really?
Loads of them. I think they're just throwing money at filmmakers. Please come film here.
Right, like the Rotterdam Kunstfonds or something.
Yeah, something like that. Also, El Hoop.
Okay, yeah.
It's a story which also fits in the city.
Yeah.
But that's one of those. And this children's movie, Totem.
I've been doing shows all around the country, and so I've been in a bunch of Dutch cities recently, and I don't know, I would love to see an Alles is Liefde in a different Dutch city. Maybe Maastricht, that would be romantic.
That would be a nice city to film in as well.
Yeah. Would Nijmegen work, do you think?
Could, if you use the right streets.
We did a show and...
the street where your hotel is in, the Lange Hazelstraat.
Is that nice?
That's a very, very picturesque street.
Okay.
It's like an
Maybe
old
I'll
street.
jump from the rooftops and then climb into the window to greet Tim tonight.
Yeah, should be good.
Improvement.
Do you have what are your improvements for Alles is Liefde?
I think there's this great regarding this soundtrack. There's this really great long form like YouTube like mini documentary that this guy who makes great. I'm sure you know him. He does the one about like why Cats is a terrible movie musical, and also Les Mis, because he's also like a music. Like I think he's like a postdoc in like music theory or something.
Yeah, I think I referred to his video essays when we did the Cats episode. Yeah,
so good. Like literally, not only does he explain to you why Cats is not a good film, but he also makes you believe that Cats the musical is good.
at least a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's like one of the best YouTubers I can possibly think of. Like his video essays are fantastic, and he has this one about why the soundtrack in Suicide Squad, speaking of Jared Leto, is really bad, and why it's one of the things that makes that movie trash.
Yeah,
and it's because it doesn't do the thing where you're using pop music to add notes or add feelings or expand. No. It's doing that thing where it tells you what to feel in a literal way, and it makes the storytelling clunky.
It flattens it.
Yeah, it flattens it.
And it flattens the song.
Exactly.
In return.
Yeah.
Like you see Amanda Waller and you get Rolling Stones with Sympathy for the Devil.
Yeah, exactly.
She is the devil. And immediately that's all the song is about.
Yeah,
is that,
and you're not taken seriously as a viewer.
Yeah.
It's dumbing it down, kind of. You know? I think one of the things, so like in Love Actually, one thing that is brilliant about the Joni Mitchell song, because it's like, oh, Joni Mitchell, it's like, I mean, I am a huge Joni Mitchell fan. She's one of my favorite music artists of all time. Like each of her albums, I feel like I have like a particular relationship with, usually linked to a breakup at some point in my teens or 20s. But she's one of the greatest songwriters ever to live. And so of course I love her, but in a rom-com, like, yeah, Joni Mitchell, that's a little on the nose. Maybe it's like a sad song, it's a breakup. But the fact that what they're using is her album Both Sides Now, where she's re-recording songs from her early catalog later in life. After decades of heavy smoking, her voice has dropped about at least an octave. And it's raspy and it's rough, but there is this lived life that is embedded in her vocal performance of Both Sides Now, which was from Court and Spark, one of her kind of breakthrough album in 1973, I think. Yeah. That tells us something about the relationship between Alan Rickman and Emma Thompson, that they're older, that they are reaching another period later in their lives, and that maybe their love hasn't lasted. If they had played the early Joni Mitchell,
which is on the album that he gives her in the film,
that would be less powerful. That would be a less powerful addition to the storytelling if it was early Joni Mitchell with her crystalline falsetto. Yeah. Because there's a naivete to that, and Joni Mitchell says that as well. The fact that they choose the later Joni Mitchell tells us something about these characters and their love that isn't within the diegetic frame. Yeah. And that's brilliant, and that's using soundtrack to further the storytelling. Yeah. And I feel like that's not what the soundtrack in Alles is Liefde is doing.
No, I think the best used song in there might be You Sexy Thing from Hot Chocolate, and that even that isn't that well used that well.
No, and that song is used in so many films of the period too. It's like almost its own kind of trope.
Well, the Full Monty probably is the one that most brought it to the front. Yeah. In a good way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, then you get this. But yeah, so you would think if you have all these elements, use them to add depth to a scene instead of flattening everything to an expectation of what a romantic comedy should be.
Yes, that's what I think. And I think that the other thing is just I believe that the film, and maybe this is because it's a product of its time, in which the vocabulary for romantic love in rom-coms relied on certain assumptions that now make us uncomfortable, relating to, harassment or assault and things like that. But I believe that each relationship in this movie, there's exposition that's lacking as to why these two particular people should be together, or why they care about one another for reasons or factors beyond just their gender and sexuality, but them as like complex characters, and I don't know why Carice and the prince are interested in one another beyond just maybe a sexual attraction to one another. But if what we're supposed to be believing in is love, then I'm sorry, it doesn't work for me.
No, it says so on the title. And that's it tells you love, but it doesn't show you.
Yeah, I think basically maybe working title, Alles is Sexual Attraction.
Could be a good movie.
Yeah, be a more honest movie.
It would be more Dutch honesty,
exactly.
frankness.
Yeah.
So it even fails at that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think maybe it's also just because of the tight pacing and the way it's directed, and also because some of my favorite actors in it at that time were still relatively unknown.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just wanted to see the actors get to play around a little bit more and live in the scenes a bit more.
Yeah. I think one of the actors who does get most leeway, but it's just because he just gets told, play a weirdo, and he plays a weirdo, is René van der Tof.
Yeah.
And he makes it his own. But,
Yeah.
well, that's his basic forte.
That's true.
But it's also interesting that he's the first case from Flodder. He plays Pete in this one, at least someone who dresses up like Pete.
Yeah.
And then you get another case in the television series, and he turns out to be Sinterklaas now.
Yeah.
Stefan de Walle. Also ask you for 3 recommendations. You also already said Kapsalon Romy.
Tip 1.
Kapsalon Romy is really amazing. Like, it's a gorgeous film, and Beppie Melisse, who's also like that, great comic actress.
Yeah.
And plays this film with incredible grit and truth, but it's still a comic performance in some ways, I think.
Tip 2.
Laatste dagen van Emma Blanc, van Alex van Warmerdam.
Jeez, yeah, there you're saying something. Oh man, I really want to rewatch that one.
Yeah.
I really love seeing that back in the day.
Yeah.
Something it is one that I missed in theaters. I think the first Van Warmerdam I saw on the big screen was Borgman.
Yeah.
But so good.
So good. That was the first of his films I ever saw. And it blew my mind, yeah.
So that's also that gives it a special place in your heart?
Yeah, it was like my way into his cinematic universe, kind of. And
well, it is one where it is very heavily present.
Yeah.
In the story.
Yeah, exactly. And it reminded me kind of like Eraserhead Lynch, where he was like flexing his muscles as like a visual artist as much as an auteur, and there's just this like uncompromising strangeness to it. Yeah,
and a delightful cruelty.
Yeah.
In his characters, I love that.
Tip 3.
And then this one I emailed you about, but Skinamarink is a movie that I saw a year ago, I think, and I think about it maybe still every single day.
How did you watch it?
I just watched it on a laptop.
I think that is the best way.
Yeah.
I did too, but I'd heard before that maybe it's helped best by watching it intimately in a small environment.
That is how I watched
and
it.
with headphones in. And once you see it on a big screen with a crowd, then it loses its magic.
Right. Oh yeah, maybe I will now avoid doing that because I think it like is it as a film. I don't even know if I want to ever watch it again, honestly. But I think it has one of the most profound effects on me of any single film in my entire life because of how it seems to tap into this like primordial kind of like headspace of early childhood, these like hazy memories that you have of waking up for a nightmare, calling out for your parents, or being ill, like having a stomach bug when you're really, really little, and there's like fear and uncertainty and in your memories, because when you were small everything is much bigger, just the way it's photographed, but like nothing is happening really in the film, but it feels, oh my god, it just
the creepiest things you see is windows appearing and disappearing, or a toilet appearing, disappearing, stuff like that, and it's just almost nothing. It's a nice editing trick, but it works so well, and it builds the tension completely. It's so tense, this film.
It just reminded it like seemed like it was activating a part of my brain that had been dormant since early childhood.
Cool.
Genuinely. And it was like that was like a disconcerting experience. For weeks after seeing it, I was like disturbed and nostalgic.
Did you hear anything?
Yeah, and like the weird scene with the parents on the bed and they're just like sitting up. Oh, it's horrifying.
And so we fought and we battled as we beat each other up. Both of us tried hard and we both failed. Yes, I had you by the thumbs, but neither of us won. Only the love for cinema prevailed.
And that, as we say, is that. All right, thank you, Derek, for finding the time to come and talk to me. And also thanks to the InScience Film Festival for getting us together. We recorded this at the office of the director of Lux, and we had a really great time. I thoroughly enjoyed his company, and also the company of his partner, Tim. After his talk at the festival, we joined together again. My girlfriend joined us as well. We had drinks there. It was really cool. As Derek said, Tim is also an actor. He's, for instance, in the Dutch movie Als uw gat maar lacht, and also in the music video of Merel's Hou je bek en bef me. That's just at the top of Dutch cool, really. So, as I mentioned, Derek is touring right now with Double Dutch live on tour. And he will be playing some dates in Barcelona, in Paris, and even closer to home in Antwerp. And I'm sure that after that you'll be able to see his stuff, his sketches and his stand-up in the Netherlands at plenty of occasions. I will leave a link in the description to his tour dates. And I recommend that you go because his live stuff is great. And do I have any movie recommendations as well? Sure, it's been a month and a half, so I've watched a shitload. But let's see. Yeah, I've been, because of the American elections, on a private binge to maybe deal with the stress of the outcome. Because, well, let's just say that what happened was really hanging in the air. And there are a couple of really great movies about American politics. One of them is The Candidate, a film directed by Michael Ritchie with a lead role for Robert Redford, who plays a candidate in an election for the US Senate. And I was expecting this to be a film sort of about populism, but it wasn't. It was more like a portrait of idealism being put through the political mangle. What happens when you start acting on behalf of a political party and what that does with your ideals, with your message, and especially with your state of mind. And to stay with Robert Redford, I also watched his thriller, his paranoia thriller, The Parallax View, which was directed by Alan Pakula, which starts with the assassination of a US presidential candidate. And years after that, it becomes apparent that people who were very close to that event have started dying, which is a very big coincidence. And Robert Redford plays a journalist who starts investigating that. The Parallax View is one of the great paranoia thrillers from the 70s, and it lives up to its reputation, I can say that. But it's not all Redford in my US politics binge. For instance, I also saw The Second Civil War, a HBO made-for-television movie by director Joe Dante of Gremlins fame. And it's not the best of his comedies, but the ideas in there are very interesting. Especially because the Second Civil War gets kicked off because of the topic of immigration. The film is from 1997, but some of the stuff feels like it could have been made now. It contains loads of familiar faces, including James Earl Jones, Dan Hedaya, and James Coburn. But what I love most maybe is that the president is played by the late Phil Hartman, one of his last roles. And where the film gets darkest, it also gets the funniest. So I would say give it a go, if you can find it, because you won't find it on HBO Max. Anyway, that's it from me. This was a cinema production, presented and edited by me, Ruud de 20e Eeuwse Vos, and of course with the lovely jingle work of the genius, that is Roy Grutters. I would like to thank my patrons for their support: Casey the Great, Onno Lubbers, Martijn van Koolwijk, the Holy Saint Niels Timmer, and Narana Bouwman. And if you would also like to offer some support, go to patreon.com/duimpjeworstelen. You can also find us on all kinds of social media, and you can email me if you like at duimpjeworstelen@gmail.com. Send me some of your vilest hate mail, please. Right, that's it. Thank you for listening. See you again in a bit. And of course, a big bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, could we have an enormous round of applause, please, for our host, who has once again succeeded in bringing to us a plethora of top-notch, cinematographically themed entertainment. We have had an absolute ball, have we not? This podcast employs a strict only like and subscribe if you really want to policy. Okay, bye.